Welcome to the show, everybody, and welcome, Dean. I missed you on Friday. It's nice to have you back here
Yeah, good to
because
be back.
I'm excited about everything you're going to be talking about today, as I am. The top five stories of the day are interesting. They take us through a journey, and they're also going to attempt to analyze what Donald Trump just said in this wild press conference. I know you didn't hear the press conference, didn't see the press conference, but it's a little mystifying what he said because in his brain this all makes a lot of sense in
He's
my
a
brain.
mystifying guy.
He's a mystifying guy. So that's our
Yeah,
number
yeah.
five story of the day. What was Trump on about today? So he said a couple of things that were interesting. One is it seems that China is his big foil in this whole thing because China is the only country that he's not negotiating with, he says right
Yeah.
now. He claims 50 countries are negotiating with him. I don't know if it's true,
No,
but
it's
he
not.
says 50 countries are negotiating with him to try and lower these tariffs. Except he says China because China is his big enemy, which we know because those of us who have really gone into this deeply know that China is a big supporter of Trump, and Trump
Mhm.
is a big supporter of China. It's secretly, at least. So there's no enemy, there's no animosity there for real. So if he's starting up sort of this trade war with China, it's not a real trade war. And I'll explain why it's not potentially a real trade war in just a second. But he says he also spoke to Japan, and there's potential negotiations there. Bibi Netanyahu, who was sitting next to him, didn't answer very many questions, but he also promised lowering the tariffs, although he ignored some other domestic issues he's having. And then, you know, there's news now that they're going to be negotiating with Iran. This is sort of a separate issue, but that the White House is going to have direct negotiations with Iran beginning this weekend. I was surprised by that. No one
With
saw that.
Netanyahu sitting right next to him,
Yeah,
by the way.
yes,
And that
yes.
surprised Netanyahu in the press conference. He's like, what? You what?
The thing is, Bibi's facing a scandal in the United States right now because he's been using his secret service, the Shin Bet, basically, to go after citizens of the country who are protesting him and other things. So he's basically playing a mini dictator role, and he's having a scandal there. But that's an aside. That's why he didn't speak so much. And then shockingly to everyone, Trump also says Gaza is an incredible piece of real estate. If a U.S. peace force managed and then says owned the Gaza, that would be a good thing. So he still is thinking about owning the Gaza Strip and turning it into the Trump Gaza. So those are the headlines. Now, what does it all mean? It means that no one really knows where this tariff situation is going, but it does seem to be setting up this trade war with China, which I think is just a, um, a proxy, really. What really is happening, and I think in order to get all these countries to lower their trade deficit or to neutralize their trade deficit with the United States, they are going to have to dump a lot of US dollars that they have in reserve. In order to dump those US dollars in reserve, they're most likely to pick up the renminbi, which is the Chinese currency. And China really wants to have this currency be a world reserve currency because it'll elevate them to the superpower they've always wanted to.
Mhm.
It will also mean a lot of US dollars start flooding the market. And if there's a lot of US dollars flooding the market, it means the currency will be weakened, the US dollar will be weakened. And that'll mean better competitiveness for American companies and also lower costs for consumers. However, it also means runaway inflation is just going to happen. I mean, it seems to me that inflation, no matter how you look at it, is going to happen. But he is banking on this idea, I think, that he can get the US dollar to be weakened. If he's able to get the US dollar to be weakened, he has a better chance when he's renegotiating debt. He's got $250 billion in debt he has to negotiate soon. And he has a better chance in reducing the hurt of these tariffs by lowering the price of the US dollar so that way it becomes more competitive for American companies.
Yeah.
That's his hope, I
Hmm.
think. I think
Hmm.
I'm reading between the lines. What's your take?
I think it's one of those hopes. I think you're touching on a few different things, but to your point, we talked about it yesterday or the other day. How do you bring an economy that's run by a democracy to its knees? Is you destroy the economy, right? And
Mhm.
and Chris Murphy said that the other day. I thought it was like, I've got a nice piece on my Substack about this very thing, which is to what end would the president of the United States intentionally, and this is super fucking intentional.
Mhm.
Why would he tank the economy? Why would he, remove 9 trillion in market value from every indices and every single retirement fund? And why would he do this? And the reason why he's doing this, and you touch on it, a couple of things. One, it's to get people to pledge to him, people, businesses, countries, so that he can manage them, so that he can get leverage on other countries, their businesses, as they relate to business in the United States. That's what he really wants. This is a tribute exercise. He's running the American government like he's fucking Don Corleone right now. That's why he's doing this. So there's that aspect to it, which is all ego. Then the other aspect to it, and there is some common sense to it, if you are, a MAGA fan, and or if you're an economist, you can see what he's trying to do, which is, to your point, you devalue the dollar, and there's more actual physical U.S. money outside the United States than there is inside the United States, to your point.
Tons.
So you have all this money that far outweighs your reserve, that is all over the place, that people are going to try and cash in as they run that on the banks. And then the banks are going to say, well, listen, your dollar is worth jack shit now. We need a new Federal Reserve or global currency. And Donald Trump can then go to Jerome Powell and he can say, hey, listen, we need to lower interest rates so that we can take care of this $35 trillion debt and the $250 billion that we need to get on the books in the next quarter. And so, there's that part of it. But the other part, and this is the third part, which is very interesting to me, is a guy like Howard Lutnick, his commerce secretary, who apparently is making tens of millions of dollars by the day because of where he is invested in a market where he can pick up depreciating assets. And you're running around with the richest people in the world that hold the majority of the money in the United States of America, and all of your global partners, also incredibly rich oligarchs. They then get to swoop in and buy all of these depressed assets, whether they be, mortgages, banks, businesses, land, doesn't matter, oil, precious metals. I mean, you're legitimately looking at an effort to enrich all the American oligarchs that have supported this man. And the only thing that makes any sense, which still doesn't make any sense, because there are ways that you can deal with your deficit that have nothing to do with destroying your economy and trillions of dollars of your country's sovereign wealth. Like, it's just, it makes little to no sense. There is no economist, and I was reading this morning about a group of economists that got together, and they said there is no professional economist on the planet outside of a guy named Ron Vera, who is Peter Navarro's ghostwriting name, by the way.
Which isn't that it's like a mix-up of his name.
Yeah. That was a great. It was on Maddow last night, and we'll get to that. But there is no economist in the world that would advocate for this kind of financial policy, because this is one policy. This is just tariffs. One policy has destroyed wealth in the United States and caused markets to collapse. Specifically this morning, I get up, it's 9 o'clock. Hong Kong's down 13.2% in the first 4 hours of trading. And then you go down the list: Vietnam, every other country, Switzerland, the UK, France. I mean, you're talking almost double digits, between 5 and 13% for those countries. This is a collapse of the global economy. And he's doing it so he can get cheaper interest rates for him and his friends, and him and his friends can buy these assets. But there's that third piece to it, Zev, and I'd love your thoughts on it. That third piece, which is, hey, you make an entire country subservient on your programs and your whims. You effectively have destroyed democracy as you know it. And if you know anything about Donald Trump, the thing that he hates the most about being president is the fucking Constitution.
You're brilliant. That's my reaction to everything you just said. What a great summary. Better than anything I've heard on any TV network or any other analysis I've read today. So thank you very much for that. I agree with you. I think that there is this is a multilateral sort of play. And the thing that he's doing about subservience is true. You mentioned that it's about getting other countries to be subservient, but he's also getting the industries to be subservient. No CEO is willing to speak out against Donald Trump right now because they're scared of what it might mean.
Did you see the billionaire pushback today a little bit, though? And I do want to bring this up because Bill Ackman, who's a piece of shit, he came out and he's like, this is crazy. I didn't think you'd do this. And you're like, yeah, you did, you dumb fuck. And then Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan came out. Several other CEOs from family services, family offices that run massive billion-dollar hedge funds and empires have come out, and they're like, hey, listen, you got to stop this. But to your point, you get all of those people that own all of those industries kowtowing to Donald Trump. What he wants to do is not just get those CEOs and captains of industry to pledge tribute to him and pledge loyalty to him. He wants all their employees to do the same thing so they can keep voting for him. That's the subjugation play here.
Absolutely. He is building himself a kingdom, and he is declaring himself king. And anyone who speaks out against him, there's a threat of going to El Salvador because That's where you can go these days if you are an American citizen or a green card holder and face absolutely no due process. So, this is the threat that he has against Americans. This is a threat he has against all these oligarchs. He knows that he has all the power in the world because that is the one power that he has, which is tariffs,
Mhm.
which is sort of exclusive to him. Congress is hinting that they might limit that, but I don't see them doing it in the near future. We'll see if maybe the Senate will come through, but not the House. Regardless, this is a massive wealth transfer. There's no other way to look at this.
Mhm.
Most Americans have so much, well, most, but a lot of Americans have so much money in their pensions in the stock market, even if they're not aware that they're invested in the stock market. A lot of these pensions and these group pensions are invested in the stock market. So when the market drops as precipitously as it has over the last few days, it affects every single American. And, these tariffs are going to make it worse and worse and worse. So we still don't even know exactly what's going to happen once China is tariffs are put in place, and what reciprocal tariffs he says may come as early as this Saturday, an additional 15% on Chinese tariffs. Who
Well,
knows?
and today part of the leak that came out was he was like, "Hey, listen, I might tariff China 104%," and you're like, "Well, you can't. I mean, you can do whatever you want." But the China thing's interesting because that kind of buttresses into as you bring up, China's got their own needs, wants here too,
Mm,
right? And they don't. China doesn't look at stuff like this like he's coming for us. Let's hit him back. It's not like a fight.
mm,
China looks for opportunity.
mm.
China looks for opportunity to sow chaos internationally, how to enrich their oligarchs. China looks for opportunities to assert themselves in different places. And what they'll do is they'll support a number of different antithetical, people, issues, parties, specifically in North America. And it happened today. Government of Canada put out this warning that said massive, and there's a piece on it at my Substack, deanblundell.substack.com. Love for you to subscribe. Where Mark Carney, who's running away with it.
So story number two coming up later in the
Oh,
show. We're going to tease
yeah,
that
yeah.
right there and come
So
back to it
there you go.
later.
Come back
But
to it
good
later.
tease,
Let's get to
good
story
tease.
number 4.
We will come back to it. It's a great story, and your
Yeah.
Substack is great, and it's a good review of what happened today. The story number four is related to the tariffs. There is a silver lining to all of this because what's happened is this was a silver lining. I'd like to find one. This one is that the all of Trump's tariffs have actually reduced the price of oil, and it's getting close to that $50 mark in Urals crude, which is the benchmark for Russian oil, and it's really concerning the Kremlin because below $50, I mean, they're expecting $70 for Ural crude this year because that will give them the ability to run their 2025 budget at a decent rate. But if it goes below 50, it really hurts the Russian economy. So it could even collapse the Russian economy because it's so on a knife edge. So Dmitry Peskov is saying we're very closely monitoring the situation, which is currently characterized as extremely turbulent, tense, and emotionally overloaded, which is different from what he said a few weeks ago about Donald Trump, which was we're in complete alignment with Donald Trump on almost everything. So he's saying that Peskov attributes the price decline to the U.S. decision to introduce tariffs for most countries in the world. And Urals crude fell to $52 per barrel at the Baltic port of Primorsk on Friday, apparently. I don't know what that means, but there you go. It went low. So we'll see where that's happening. It could be that the tariffs actually have a negative impact on Putin.
Yeah, the butterfly effect around Donald Trump is very fucking real, right? The butterfly effect up here in Canada is his chosen candidate, Maple MAGA knockoff Pierre Poilievre, is getting his head bashed in the polls right now. Has lost somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 points when it comes
Did
to
you say
polling.
that he was
50.
not going to win his seat? I thought I read that in your
Yeah,
on your on your on your blog
he's
this week.
losing. He's losing in his own riding by something like
Wow.
6 to 7% to a guy named Bruce Fanjoy. So what they've resorted to is destroying his lawn signs. I get such a kick out of that dumb shit. But
Oh,
that
I want to get one of those. It's going to be like a collector's
Bruce
item, I
Fanjoy,
think.
oh dude, it's like Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. It's going to be great. So part of the butterfly effect up here, and it isn't just the butterfly effect up here, it's the butterfly effect around the world when it comes to having a blithering fucking idiot as the president of the United States, like a mean, evil, blithering fucking idiot who seems to think because he got voted in at the behest of a couple foreign powers and a bunch of rich people in the United States, he's an economist. He's not. He's a fucking moron. And so all of a sudden now you have this butterfly effect of having a moron in office, and the butterfly effect can be felt in Ukraine with the EU deciding to band together and spend billions, almost trillions on reinforcing their security agreements and rearming and getting closer together. The butterfly effect in Canada and the EU is we're getting together with them to produce an energy corridor and armaments and jets, and we're going to arm, the pro democracy, countries in this world, changing everything in Canada. And the butterfly effect in Russia seems to be, well, the price of oil is down everywhere. So, and Russia lives on oil. It's the only reason they're able to even fucking piece together a war. That's the only thing that they have. They've got a whole bunch of rich crude oil that they're pumping into other countries that they're slowly deciding they don't want because Russia's a terrorist state. But Donald Trump is literally doing this to everybody. So, we laugh at, or we're angry, we're frustrated, we're pissed off at the tariffs and what they're doing to our businesses and employment, and their layoffs are already starting in the automotive industry, and so there's real terrible things to go with this. But when I get really down, I think about all the butterfly effect things that are around and I'm like, my God, you know what? It's true. It's true. There are silver linings, and one of those silver linings today came when I looked at Tesla's share price.
Oh yeah,
which was down like 15% again today, and I'm like, and the market value that he's lost is $1.1 trillion. So, hang in there for the good stuff too, people. It's not all bad.
I'm interested in Musk's fortunes very, very closely. So I'm watching that very closely. So it's interesting to see that the price of Tesla continues to go down. The butterfly effect, it's a beautiful, beautiful idea to think about all the good things, all the silver linings that happen from Donald Trump. It'll keep your spirits up.
Schadenfreude is like my favorite emotion, by the way. When bad things happen to shitty people, I get erect from time to time.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I always wondered what gets you wrecked.
What gets me going?
Now I know.
The Trump butterfly effect.
Oh my God, dude, you should see a therapist about that. Loomergate is what I'm calling number 3.
Oh.
So I know sometimes I get on a hobby horse and I just keep pounding a story, but this one is a story that I can't let go because this national security crisis is a crisis. I mean, whoever this woman is, if she's a influencer or if she's his mistress, if she's his an asset for the Russians, for the Chinese, I don't know.
Yes.
But whoever she is, she can't just walk into the president's office and say, hey, you need to decapitate your entire National Security Council and also fire the head of the NSA, and he listens. I mean, that to me is not normal behavior. It's just completely abnormal. It's crazy. It creates the appearance of someone who's excessively influential who has been not elected. And I think that this story is getting swept under the carpet, and I think it's really a problem because what they've done is really cut off the important conduit between the White House and the Ukrainian military, which was so important to get all those arms and all the support that the Americans have been giving the Ukrainians have been funneled through the NSC. The fact that those people are now gone, that really hurts Ukraine, and it really helps who? Russia. So that sort of makes you question, well, is this a Russian intended operation? Does she work for the Russians? The next thing you've got to ask yourself is, why did they get rid of the NSA director, who is by all accounts a wizard at everything about cybersecurity and about also responding to the Salt Typhoon. The Salt Typhoon was that big operation by the Chinese that basically invaded everyone's telecommunications provider, Verizon, you name it, all those big providers, and was able to basically hack into every main politician's, officials' phones and read everyone's text messages and hear everyone's voicemails. Well, the former director of the NSA, he was the guy who was about to launch a massive response to the Salt Typhoon, and then oops, he goes. Suddenly, Laura Loomer walks in, and off he goes. He's fired, and so is his deputy. These things make me think that this Loomergate, whatever you want to call it, is really, really problematic. And the fact that there's not a bigger uproar about it is concerning to me. But it's the number 3 story today.
Yeah, Timothy D. Hague, he's the head of the National Security Agency, and
I think Ho is how you say it.
Ho, U.S. Cyber Command as well. U.S. Cyber Command. So like the two most important, pillars of what's under attack in the United States and in the Western world, the guy that was holding those up, and 2 of his subordinates who reported to him, who were also very important, who had been with the department for like 20 and 30 years, right? Non-biased.
Yeah,
not committed really apparently great person, and maybe one of the sharpest minds when it comes to national security, cybersecurity, and when it comes to America's national security. So they got rid of him at the behest of a woman who a year ago was begging Elon Musk for more Twitter payouts after she locked herself, chained herself to Twitter's head office and screamed, "Who's going to come and save me?" A woman who is legitimately fucking insane. A woman who absolutely has direct ties to Putin. And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating about this, other than how fucking incredible it was, that some, pardon me, MAGA tart can walk in off the street into the Oval Office, have a meeting with Donald Trump, who then turns around and gets rid of three different people who were holding up the National Security Agency, who not only held it up, who headed up the National Security Agency, people that had no affiliation to any party, under the guise that they were leakers. That's what she went in there and told them. You have 3 leaks. Now, where does that come from, and how do you put a little distance between yourself and Vladimir Putin? Well, you have this person who will really do anything to be anybody in your administration, who's literally psycho. She is so fucking unwell, and I know there's a lot of people out there, and I don't say this lightly. Listen, we all suffer from some kind of mental illness. But she's like untreated schizophrenic, untreated bipolar. She has talked about it. She's literally crazy. She's crazy to the point where she was deemed a national security risk prior to Trump winning. And she's now making decisions to get rid of really key linchpins that are holding up the national security and cybersecurity apparatus in the United States. So, if you're asking me, how do you read those tea leaves? Donald Trump will do anything to get rid of anybody that stands between him and Vladimir Putin, that stands between him and achieving some kind of multipolar world, that tells him no, effectively. And you have 3 people that had no problem telling any president for the past 20 to 30 years, telling the president, no, you can't do that. Here's why. Here's what you shouldn't do. Because those conversations are very real around what Trump is trying to do for Putin in Ukraine. Still doesn't shit talk him, didn't tariff the guy. Everything's in the tea leaves. We can see it. We don't have to listen to him. We can just watch what he does. And what he did yesterday was just remove another barrier between him and the destruction of Ukraine and furthering relationships with Russia.
Well said. It's interesting. On the weekend, I published a story on narrative.org about Laura Loomer's involvement in that really strange narrative that went on during the campaign. Remember the Haitian pet eating narrative that existed during that whole campaign? Well, she's the one who launched it. She's the one who actually launched it. And we also know that, the other people who launched it who were involved in spreading it were Elon Musk and, a few other very well-known right-wing influencers. But we also definitely know that this thing was amplified by Russian disinformation fronts for the Russian intelligence services. So this is way back in September of last year when this was started spreading. And the claim here was that there were Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, who were eating pets. And it started this whole sort of fervor against poor Springfield.
Widely debunked within 3 days.
It wasn't true. But nevertheless, because Laura Loomer had sent it out there, it originally originated from a Russian disinformation operation, but then Laura Loomer amplified it. She was the first person to do so. And then it became a big talking point. Now, it's also interesting that during the campaign, she at various times was seen by Donald Trump's side as his, girlfriend. I don't know, maybe, who knows what, side thing. Mistress. So it's interesting that weekend when this thing came up in the campaign, when it was part of the debate, remember he brought it up in the second debate against Kamala Harris, Loomer was right by his side during that whole weekend. So as they were spreading this Haitian pet eating thing, Laura Loomer was right by Donald Trump's side and spreading and part of the team, I would guess, who helped him get to mention this during the Kamala Harris debate. So her history with Russian disinformation, her history in influencing Trump is far greater than we realize. Yes, she's crazy. Yes, she's a loon. But oftentimes we can understand what she's doing because it seems to align so clearly with Russian disinformation and other Russian policies. And that's why I question a lot about what she was doing in that office last Wednesday. I don't understand how she got in there for half an hour right after the tariff announcement. You'd think that's a critical time. He's not going to be wasting it on a girlfriend. So he's probably getting her in there because he wants to hear what she says. And she had dossiers, documents, you name it, background information on all these people she was firing. Where does she get that? How does she get that?
Mm, I get, if you've seen any of Laura Loomer's work, I can tell you she didn't put it together. That's for sure.
She's not that good a researcher. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, she's not. She's literally just a crazy mouthpiece. That's all she is. It's literally one of the more stunning aspects of the last week, and people should be very concerned, specifically Americans who are concerned with their national security. Listen, your country's gone. Trump's just fire hosing your nuclear secrets to other countries right now, all your data and stuff like that. So you might want to look at this and go, well, Laura Loomer's the least of our worries, maybe, but like they're literally stripping away any cybersecurity, national security that protects you as an American at the
dangerous.
fucking behest of Laura Loomer.
Yeah, like why is there such a big emphasis on cutting every single cyber defense we've had? Is it because something's coming? Maybe something's coming. I should also say, people are talking about the Signal chat incident, and that's why some of these people may have been offed. Well, it's true that maybe some of these people were off because of Signal chat. Maybe that's exactly what she was trying to get at. But she didn't get rid of Waltz, who actually started the group chat, who actually compromised American, and Hegseth. Those two people are still there. I saw Hegseth sitting next to Trump today. But who she gets rid of is supposedly these people who leaked, or supposedly these people who may have included Jeffrey Goldberg in these chat groups. In other words, they're just concerned about the cover-up. They're not actually concerned about the fact that they were compromising American security. Just the fact that it was exposed was their problem, and that's who she decided to target. Although I don't believe, we'll see with the story lands. It's still developing, and I hope people pay attention to it. Are you ready for number 2?
Never been more ready.
So tell us what's going on in Canada about, are the Chinese backing Carney?
Yeah, they're backing anybody that, they're backing chaos effectively. And again, there's a story about this on my Substack. You can go read it, deanblundell.substack.com. A report came out today. The government of Canada, law enforcement put out a report saying they're aware of a campaign that started on a WeChat news site that is targeting Mark Carney. Now, if you remember prior to the election, there were a bunch of advisories that were coming out, CSIS, Canadian law enforcement, were like, okay, Russia, MAGA, China, they're going to come after our elections. They're going to try and influence the election. So how does Russia do this? It's interesting. Or how does China do this? And it's interesting because it's the same playbook, but Russia's and China are the best at this, right? MAGA's just catching up. Trump's America is just catching up. You throw phony support behind certain things to make other people feel like if the bad guys support that person, then we shouldn't, right? If communist, fascist, terrorist, dictator-led countries are supportive of that person, I'll bring you back to when Putin endorsed Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And when Trump endorsed Mark Carney, it is like a 101 mass disinformation, mass psychosis playbook where, certain government entities know that the large majority of voters are not very well read, right? We're single issue surface voters. We're people who will hear something and go, yeah, that sounds good to me. I'll vote for that guy. They're not going to look into the person, the character. They're not going to read a dossier or report put out by CSIS. Well, luckily I did. This is what I do. And effectively, this is what is happening. Is China has started this mass disinformation campaign, not only to damage every Canadian political party, but to damage the Conservative Party because they don't think the Conservative Party will work with the Chinese government. Correct. They're supporting Mark Carney to also damage Mark Carney for the same purposes that Putin endorsed Kamala, which was to damage Kamala. It's twofold. They want to destroy both political parties. They want to destroy both. Like, China doesn't give a shit about who wins this election. They just want to see a country that's broken and in chaos so that we fall down on our knees and beg China for help, so that we lose influence on the world stage, so we look like we're broken. That has been everything that's gone into all the MAGA shit for the past, I would say, 4 or 5 years, specifically the Maple MAGA shit. Keep telling everybody your country is broken, and these parties work with foreign assets and foreign interests. Well, that's happening across Canada. Yes, there are other governments like India who absolutely helped Pierre Poilievre win the leadership race. He's the Maple MAGA candidate. MAGA, who endorsed Pierre Poilievre early until the tide turned, then they endorsed Mark Carney because they're like, whoa, we're poison. Let's stick that poison right in the face of the Canadian people and get the Canadian people to think that we really want Mark Carney to win because they hate us. Maybe they won't vote for him. And that's exactly what China's doing. He is legitimately the target of one of the biggest misinformation and disinformation campaigns, national security risk campaigns that this country's ever seen because there's so much at stake in this election. And China is notorious for doing this. I think 10,000 accounts have now put out something close to 20 or 30 million impressions, or done something like 20 to 30 million impressions. And it's all comes from the same agency, and that agency spreads that hatred around. And it's very strategic to your point. Do they think that Mark Carney is going to be better for China? No. Mark Carney doesn't give a shit about that. Mark Carney gives a shit about Canada. What they think is that if we endorse him, maybe that'll create some kind of movement against Mark Carney. The other school of thought, you and I kind of chatted about it and it made sense. The other school of thought is how can we damage both the United States and Canada at the same time? How can we have somebody who's standing up to Trump? And Mark Carney is like, he's viciously standing up to Trump, talking about he's every single press release, we're going to fight America, we're going to fight Canada, we're going to protect Canadian workers. And so part of this is like, there's different reasons for it. Part of this is, well, even if he does win, then we can hide behind the fact that we supported him, and then we can get him to do our dirty work against Donald Trump, right? So the Chinese Communist government doesn't think like we think, kind of like Russia doesn't think like we think. We'll put a psyop together to hurt somebody, but China will put a psyop together that hurts somebody, maybe helps that person as well, but also damages 15 other people in the process. It's like a shotgun tactic, and it works. China's the best at it.
That's a great summary. I think you're right about everything you're saying, and I tend to lean on the second part of that explanation at the end there, because here's the two things that I have noticed. Carney is actually working with China to work different supply chains and different import and export possibilities in the event that Canada gets really cut off from the United States. Of course, he has to talk to China. That's a huge market, and he has to keep them in mind. So there is a conversation going on between Beijing and Ottawa about exactly how they can work more closely together. So that is happening. Now, does it work for China to have Carney be so oppositional to Donald Trump? Absolutely. These guys want the Arctic more than anything else. Their number one goal is to get the Arctic, and by aligning themselves with Canada, especially a Canada that's opposed to Donald Trump, they get access to the Arctic, which is exactly what they want. So it could work out.
They're in bed with everybody. They're in bed with Putin. Maybe they can get a piece of the Arctic for Putin. Maybe they can get a piece of the Arctic from Trump. Maybe they can get a piece of the Arctic from Carney. That's how China thinks, and people don't realize that. They're thinking like in a kaleidoscope of possible advantages at their disposal. So they'll get into bed with anybody. They'll also cut anybody's knees off. To your point, that's a great point. Yeah.
And the Arctic is necessary for them just because of the trade routes. They can be part of the Arctic Club. Then great for them. They get to charge people. They get ports of access in Canada. There's a whole bunch of ways that they could really profit off, and rare minerals, and you name it, a whole bunch of other things that they can profit off if they get the Arctic. So that's something that's worth considering. I do think it's really interesting that they play this reverse psychology. We saw, and also these sleeper cells in the Russian operation to swing the elections of 2024. Mm-hmm. They had a bunch of people who were sort of sleeper cells inside social media accounts. In other words, they appeared to be either talking about benign topics like sports or whatever else, or they appeared to be supporting Biden or Kamala Harris. But then at one point, they flipped them when they needed them. So when the narrative needs to change, when they need their cells to suddenly say something like, hey, maybe Biden's too old, shouldn't lead the country, that's when they flip the cells. And they've got such control, because a lot of these are actually not real people, they're AI accounts. They can say, suddenly these sleeper accounts that are talking about one thing, then when they need them, they just turn them over, and suddenly there seems to be a groundswell of opinion about something that they are pushing.
Well, have you seen? And you know what? It's such a great point, and we can move on to the number one
Yeah,
story of the day after this.
yeah.
But it's such a strong digital tactic, right? It's to have an account, and this is a big problem that we have in social media right now. Have an account that's got a mass group of followers that really caters to, and most of these are bots that really caters to the left or the right, and
Hmm.
then watching those accounts take this auspicious turn, right, where it's like, wait a second, this guy was like a full-on libtard, and now
Yeah.
he's like advocating for for Russia to take out Ukraine, or now he's advocating for something that's completely not in this. Now he's advocating against Israel. That's a
Mm.
big one right now too.
Yeah.
Is you had a lot of those accounts that are not real, some that were real that are actually getting paid for it, sleeper cells, AI bots, but there are real people that get paid for this too. Mario Nawfal is one of them. There are so many people that have been campaigning and building their brands catering to people on the left or people on the right, where depending on the need in the moment, they'll turn those things right
Yeah.
around. They'll flip those assets, to your point.
And then people, follow these guys because they seem to follow their opinion. And then when they need them, they've got a following, and that's
Yeah.
such an important thing. Disinformation is a very complicated environment. There's no doubt about it. And Carney may be trapped in one of these cycles where we don't know exactly which side is backing him. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And certainly,
Well, the
doesn't
good
seem to be.
news is Mark Carney has his background check. He's got his national security
He
clearance.
does. He
And
does.
so he was able to get read in on all
Yeah.
this stuff today. So they put out a big press release, very transparent. And his opponent still refuses to get his
So
because
Pierre
he's
Poilievre did not get that briefing today, I guess. There you go, Canada.
Yeah.
And the number one story in the news today is the Trump administration is planning a June the 14th military parade through the streets of Washington, D.C. to mark the president's, get this, 79th birthday. It's for his birthday. We're holding a military parade. What could sound more Stalin-like than that? Nothing, really. It'll be the Army's 250th anniversary, said a senior administration official who confirmed the plans to News Nation. The Washington City paper was the first reporting the news of the parade. They'll say it'll stretch about 4 miles from the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, to the White House.
Which translated from Trump admin speak means probably a block and a half.
I mean,
Right.
it is 4 miles between the Pentagon and the White House, so maybe that he can't change. But I'm sure they'll fill it up with a lot of hardware. This is going to be a military parade for the president's birthday. Something that doesn't happen in America, is not very American, but we're doing it.
No, America never put their wares on display for
Yeah.
the longest period of time, and they would laugh at other countries that did, because they're like, "Wait a second, you're going to show everybody your new shit? We're never going to show anybody our shit. We're just going to hit you with it."
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
But now that Trump's in town, I just want to bring up other dictators and leaders that used to throw military parades for their birthdays.
Yeah.
Kim Jong Un, Kim Jong Il, Joseph Stalin. Okay, these aren't great people. they're not great people. Adolf Hitler. Let's get to Erdogan, who's not really a dictator but kind of is.
He is.
Syria has done theirs. Every single dictator chooses to throw himself a birthday party by showing everybody how small their dick is, by showing everybody else how powerful they might be,
Yeah.
right? And Donald Trump is now going to enter that fray. If I'm an American and I know that guy is going to spend $94 million of my dollars during an economic meltdown
Crazy.
in the United States to pay homage, to force a country to pay homage to himself on his 79th birthday. He's not doing this because the military's turning 250.
No.
He's doing this because he's turning 79 and he thinks he's the greatest, and he wants everybody to know how powerful he is. This is sheerly just a mushroom dick showing opportunity for Donald Trump, where he's going to tell everybody, see how powerful I am with all this stuff that I got behind me,
Yeah.
that he didn't earn, that he stole, and he's going to force you to pay for it and turn it into this grand experiment where he's going to hide behind bulletproof glass and let everybody pay fealty to him, while a bunch of Howies and a couple of transport units and some people with bazookas traipse down the fucking street from the Pentagon to the fucking White House.
I thought owning a Cybertruck was the ultimate small PP move, but no.
No,
Apparently,
throwing
you
yourself
can,
a military parade is the ultimate little dick energy move, like
yeah,
of
on your
all time.
birthday,
On
on
your
your
birthday.
birthday,
Yeah,
just so
yeah, yeah.
everybody knows what you're projecting. Anyhow, 70. What do you say? 79 million? What did you say it cost?
94 million.
94 million. He's cutting Social Security, cutting the Department of Education, slashing Meals on Wheels, but he's throwing a birthday party worth $94 million
Yeah.
for him. Oh my gosh.
Well, and plus he's going to bring a whole bunch of world leaders in for it, undesirable world leaders, and they're going to think it's cool. I've heard that Putin might actually come over for it because it's not. Putin always throws himself a military
Yeah.
birthday party every year. Last year he threw one. It's like, okay, we only got a few tanks left, but let's throw those out into the open and let's have some fun with that. But this is the egregiousness of and the ego and the little dick energy of the world's dumbest, dictator in waiting. That's what we're seeing in America. If I'm American, man, I'm not. I don't want that to happen. Not in my backyard. Not. Like, I'm doing everything I can to stop that.
You know
Even
what it
if
also
I'm
says?
in the
Sorry.
admin. Go ahead.
You know what he also says? It says, Army, you need to listen to me. You need to be subservient to me. You're marching
Yeah.
for me on my birthday because I am in charge. So when I call you up to do things in the US that you're not meant to do, you'll follow my orders because you've marched before me. You've, shown your fealty towards me. And of course, he is the commander in chief, no doubt. But the act of parading in front of him is going to be quite impactful, I think, to a lot of that. And frankly, I don't know why the army is agreeing to do it. And I don't know why the rank and file of the army is agreeing to do it. And I wonder if we will see some people saying, I don't want to do this.
Not interested.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. But listen, you talk about the rank and file being paraded in front of him.
Mm.
Every single day that dickhead has been in office, he has had world leaders paraded in front of him, talking about how awesome he is, being forced to talk about how much they need America and how smart Trump is, and well, maybe with the help of that is all by design. He wants America, the rest of the world, the Americans that he's currently penalizing, the people whose wealth he's stealing, the people whose lives he's destroying, to bow before him. This is king making, dictator making 101. And you're seeing it every day that he's in office. This is just an extension of that.
Such a good point. And this is why I hope the world, and especially Canada, as much as they're, poised to be anti-America in this current situation, they need to be pro-American people and anti-Trump. I mean, I think that's such an important delineation. The American people have been captured. Many of them are very fearful right now, although it was amazing to see 5 million people show up at the various protests on the weekend. I think the Hands Off campaign was a huge success, although you wouldn't know it from a lot of the news media who didn't really pay as much of attention to it as they should have. And there were huge crowds in places like Minnesota and Colorado, in Chicago, Boston, New York, huge crowds. And many people did not see the hundreds and thousands, maybe as much as 5 million people that came out to protest this weekend. So, this is good news. And it means that even though there's a lot of fear going on, Americans are still going to go out and protest. And I hope the world continues to support the American people. The American people need to be freed from this toxic, disgusting leadership that is now currently in control of the presidency, who are doing all the worst moves, including this birthday party on June something.
Well, let's just hope some machinery malfunctions at the right time.
That would be interesting. Yeah, right. If everything sort of breaks down, all those great American weapons just don't work.
And just a quick postscript, if I can, Zev, and I know you're wrapping up, so it won't take long. We didn't really talk about the hands-off protests, and to your point, mainstream media did an incredible job of blunting any information, any visuals, any audio. Boston, Chicago, New York. Millions of Americans came out, and this isn't a one-time thing. In America, we saw you. We want you back. We saw you this last weekend. We saw all those people. I'm watching senators try to protect Canada. I'm watching people at those rallies with signs that say, Canada, we're sorry. We know that. We know that. We love you. We love you. You're going to be okay. We're behind you. We're not behind Trump. We're not behind MAGA America. We're behind Americans. And don't stop. Keep going. Show up to rallies. We had massive rallies here in Toronto for you. Rallies around the world. Berlin, France. France does rallies and protests better than everybody else. It was just a whole bunch of really pretty women with no shirts on with MAGA things and the swastika in the middle. I'm like, oh, God, I love France. Yeah, it was so incredible. Kat Wilson, she says, we're coming back. We are sorry. We hate him too. I know, Kat. I know you. Truth Factor's smiling too. My American friends, listen, you're going to be fine, but don't stop. Don't stop. Keep showing up for yourselves. We'll continue to inform you and tell you what's going on between our countries. We'll keep this relationship nice and tight. You don't have to worry about it. But keep doing what you're doing. Go to the Hands Off website. I believe it's Hands Off 2025. Look for rallies in your area, in your city. Go and support them if you want to protect your environment, protect your family, protect women's rights, protect children's rights, protect your money, protect your retirement, protect your community, protect your friends, and protect your family. Continue to show up for each other. I watched you wake up this weekend. Your Substack post about America Awakening was incredible. Zev Shalev, or sorry,
I didn't write it. It was just a
narrative.substack.com.
viewer,
What
a
was
very
it?
good friend of the shows, who's been a supporter of mine for many years, wrote that
So good.
beautiful, and everyone should check it out on narrative.org.
Yeah.
She doesn't want her name out there, but let me assure you that she's a great friend of the show, and she wrote that after going to the Washington Monument protest on the weekend,
Yeah.
and powerful and stirring words. So thank you for
Makes you feel like you're
that.
not alone, like when you're with a
Yeah.
bunch of people who have the same problem as you do, right? Because like we live in a very segmented world, very isolated world where we can do everything on our phones and our computers. When you show up like that physically, you look around and you're buoyed by it. And I could see it. I mean, it was a sea of people in Boston. It was a sea of people in New York, millions
Mm.
and millions of people. And it happened all the way from Alaska down to Texas. It happened in Hawaii. It happened in Berlin. It happened in Paris. It happened in Toronto. And it's not just a global rally to get that shithead out of office. It's America's hope. And so I hope everybody in the United States is encouraged today. Things don't end quickly with stuff like this. It's a slow burn. And there are way more of you than them, like way more, hundreds of millions more of you than them. Remember that.
And when you show up and you connect with your fellow Americans, that power is exponential. So
Yeah.
the more people show up, and I think the next one's on April 19th, the more power there will be for the people of America. So that the voice that you have now is through protests and through the streets. And I hope Americans continue to do that, because it's the only way through this. And on that note, unless you want to say something else, we can say goodnight to everybody. Everyone should check out the Dean
I'm done.
Blundell Substack, deanblundell.substack.com. Really brilliant stuff that you put out daily. Everyone needs to check it out. Everyone needs to subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your family. You can also find my Substack at narrative.org, narrativ.org. You can subscribe there as well. And on that note, we wish you a very good night. We'll be back tomorrow on another 5 Stack. Have a good night, everybody.
Night.